Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Small Fights, Big Meaning. I'm your host, Jamie, and today we're diving into a topic that resonates with many of us: the way tiny issues can escalate into massive arguments. Whether it's the way your partner leaves the dishes or the tone your friend uses in a text, we often find ourselves embroiled in conflicts that seem disproportionate to the original issue. I'm excited to have Dr. Emily Carter, a relationship psychologist and author of The Art of Conflict Resolution, joining us today. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm thrilled to be here. This topic is so relevant because we often overlook how small grievances can trigger larger emotional responses. It's like a pressure cooker. Little things build up until one small issue causes the lid to blow off. People often think that these fights are about the surface issue, but beneath, there are deeper values, unmet needs, and sometimes past experiences that fuel the fire.
That's a great point, Emily. It's vital to recognize that these small fights often reflect larger patterns in our relationships. Can you give us an example of how something seemingly trivial can point to deeper issues? Maybe a common scenario couples face?
Absolutely. Let's consider a couple where one partner frequently leaves the cabinet doors open after cooking. At first glance, it seems trivial. However, for the other partner, this behavior might symbolize a lack of consideration or teamwork. It could trigger feelings of resentment or neglect. The argument, then, isn't really just about the cabinet doors. It taps into deeper issues of respect and communication. Understanding this can help couples approach the situation with empathy rather than frustration.
That's insightful. It's fascinating how those underlying emotions can amplify the intensity of what seems like a small issue. How can individuals or couples learn to differentiate between what's a minor inconvenience versus a sign of deeper conflict?
Great question. One effective method is to practice self-reflection. When you feel irritation arising from what seems like a small issue, pause and ask yourself why it bothers you so much. Are there past experiences influencing your reaction? Journaling can also help track these emotions over time. Furthermore, open communication is key. Discussing feelings without blaming or pointing fingers allows both partners to explore the underlying meanings without escalating the argument.
Welcome back to our podcast, everyone, where we're exploring the fascinating topic of how small fights can lead to big arguments. In our last episode, we touched on some common triggers that escalate these tiny issues. Today, I want to dive deeper into the psychology behind these conflicts. What drives us to react so intensely to seemingly minor grievances?
That's a great question. A lot of it comes down to underlying emotions and unresolved issues. Often, a small fight isn't about the surface issue at all. For instance, if someone leaves a dish in the sink, it might not just be about cleanliness. It can trigger feelings of neglect or unappreciation that have been bubbling under the surface. These underlying feelings can amplify our reactions and transform a trivial disagreement into a major argument.
Absolutely, and I think that's a critical point to recognize. So, how can we identify these deeper emotions before they lead to a blow-up? What strategies would you recommend for couples to better communicate when they feel something small is about to escalate?
One effective strategy is practicing active listening. This means really paying attention to what your partner is saying and demonstrating that you understand their feelings. Instead of immediately responding with your own perspective, try to reflect back what you've heard. This not only fosters a sense of validation but also helps you both clarify the root of the issue. Additionally, setting aside regular times to check in with each other about your feelings can help prevent small issues from simmering into larger conflicts.
Welcome back to Small Fights, Big Meaning. In our previous discussions, we explored how minor annoyances can snowball into significant conflicts. Today, I want to delve deeper into the underlying psychological factors that fuel these small disputes. For instance, how do our past experiences shape our reactions to seemingly trivial issues?
That's a great question. Our past experiences play a vital role in how we interpret and react to conflicts. Often, we project unresolved feelings from previous situations onto current issues. This could be anything from childhood experiences to past relationships. For example, if someone felt dismissed as a child, they might overreact when they feel ignored in a conversation today, even if it was unintentional.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how those ingrained feelings can resurface. But what about communication styles? How do different ways of expressing ourselves contribute to these tiny issues escalating?
Communication styles are critical. People often have different ways of expressing needs or frustrations. Some might be more direct, while others may take a passive-aggressive approach. If someone is more confrontational and their partner is avoidant, even a small disagreement can lead to a big blow-up. The key is recognizing these styles and understanding that they stem from individual backgrounds and coping mechanisms.
That's so true, and I think it's also about the timing of those communications. Sometimes, the moment we choose to bring up a small issue can dramatically affect the outcome. What do you think about the role of timing in these discussions?
Timing is crucial. If someone brings up a small issue during a stressful moment, it's likely to be met with defensiveness. On the other hand, if the conversation is initiated during a calm and relaxed time, it can lead to a more constructive dialogue. It's about creating the right environment where both parties feel safe to express their feelings without escalating into a larger argument.
Welcome back to our discussion on small fights, big meaning. In our previous segments, we touched upon the psychology behind why minor issues escalate. Today, I want to dive deeper into the role of communication styles in these tiny arguments. It's fascinating how different backgrounds influence how we express ourselves. Can you share some insights about how upbringing might affect our conflict resolution styles?
Absolutely. Our upbringing plays a significant role in shaping how we communicate. For instance, in some families, open expression of feelings is encouraged, while in others, it might be viewed as a sign of weakness. This can lead to differing conflict approaches. Someone from a more expressive background might address a small issue directly, seeking resolution immediately. In contrast, someone from a reserved background might bottle it up, leading to bigger explosions later. It's important for partners to understand these backgrounds to navigate conflicts more effectively.
That's such a good point. Understanding each other's backgrounds can really help soften those heated moments. But beyond backgrounds, what about the actual dynamics of a conversation? Sometimes, it's not just what we say, but how we say it. Tone, body language, even silence can play crucial roles. Have you found any strategies that can help people communicate better during these small fights?
Definitely. One of the most effective strategies is practicing active listening. This means really paying attention to what the other person is saying without planning your response while they're talking. It can create an environment of respect and understanding. Additionally, using I statements helps shift the focus from blame to personal feelings. For example, saying, "I feel hurt when you do this" rather than, "You always do this" can de-escalate the situation. These techniques not only improve communication but also foster a more profound connection between partners.
Great suggestions. Active listening and using I statements can truly transform the way we navigate conflicts. Now, let's talk about the aftermath of these arguments. Often, after a fight, there is an opportunity for growth and understanding. How can individuals or couples use these small fights as a stepping stone for a healthier relationship?
That's a crucial aspect. After resolving a small conflict, it's beneficial to reflect together on what happened. This reflection can include asking questions like, "What triggered this disagreement?" or, "How can we prevent this in the future?" This not only helps in addressing the root causes but also promotes a sense of teamwork. Moreover, practicing gratitude towards each other post-conflict can strengthen bonds. A simple acknowledgement of how you both handled the situation can reinforce positive communication and build resilience against future tiny fights turning into big arguments.
Welcome back to our podcast series on small fights, big meaning. In today's segment, we're diving deeper into why those seemingly trivial issues escalate into major conflicts. I think it's crucial to address the emotional undercurrents that often accompany these small disputes. What are your thoughts on how emotions play a role in inflating these minor disagreements, Dr. Smith?
Absolutely. Emotions are at the heart of these conflicts. Often, it's not just about the issue at hand, like leaving the cap off the toothpaste or forgetting to take out the trash. What's really happening is that these actions trigger deeper feelings of neglect or disrespect. When someone feels unimportant, even minor infractions can feel like personal attacks. This emotional baggage can quickly turn a small annoyance into a major argument.
That's a great point. It sounds like the key to understanding these arguments lies in recognizing the underlying emotions. How can couples or friends approach these tiny issues to prevent them from exploding into bigger fights? Are there any strategies you recommend?
Definitely. One effective strategy is to practice open communication. When a small issue arises, instead of reacting defensively, it's important to express feelings calmly and assertively. For instance, if the toothpaste cap is left off, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," try expressing, "I feel frustrated when the cap is left off because it makes me feel like my needs aren't considered." This way, you are addressing the behavior and its impact on you without resorting to blame.
Welcome back to our podcast, where we dive deep into the underlying causes of conflicts in our daily lives. In the previous segments, we explored some common small issues that can escalate into major arguments. Today, let's delve into the emotional layers behind these tiny fights. My guest, Dr. Sarah Johnson, a psychologist specializing in conflict resolution, is here to help us understand why we often react so strongly to seemingly minor issues. Sarah, why do you think people often blow small issues out of proportion?
That's a great question. Often, it's not just about the small issue at hand, like the way someone leaves their shoes in the hallway. Instead, it can be a trigger for deeper feelings, such as frustration, feeling unappreciated, or even past grievances that haven't been addressed. These tiny issues can serve as a catalyst for these bigger emotions. When someone feels overwhelmed or unheard, they might react disproportionately to something that seems trivial. It's like the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. It's like the accumulation of unresolved feelings. So, what strategies do you recommend for individuals to address these underlying emotions before they escalate into full-blown arguments?
One effective strategy is to practice self-awareness and mindfulness. When you feel that frustration bubbling up over a small issue, take a moment to pause and reflect on what's really bothering you. Ask yourself questions like, is this really about the shoes, or is it about feeling taken for granted? Communicating these feelings openly with your partner or friend can also help. Using I statements, such as, "I feel overwhelmed when I see the shoes left out," can express your feelings without placing blame, which often leads to defensive reactions.
I like that approach. It promotes understanding instead of defensiveness. Can you share an example of how someone might effectively communicate these feelings without igniting further conflict?
Certainly. Let's say you're frustrated about your partner not taking out the trash. Instead of saying, "You never take out the trash," which can sound accusatory, you might say, "I feel stressed when the trash piles up because it feels like I'm carrying that responsibility alone." This way, you're expressing your feelings and the impact of the situation on you, rather than launching an attack. This approach invites dialogue and understanding, rather than a defensive reaction.
That's a powerful shift in communication. Sometimes, it's hard for people to see that their partner is not the enemy in these situations, but rather, they're both dealing with their own unresolved issues. In your experience, do you find that couples often have similar triggers for their arguments?
Yes, absolutely. Many couples experience similar patterns of triggers. For instance, issues around responsibility, communication styles, and even financial stress can often come up repeatedly. Often, these arguments represent deeper insecurities or fears. For example, someone might feel inadequate about their job, which can make them more sensitive to someone else's comments or actions that feel critical. Recognizing these patterns can help couples address the root causes of their conflict rather than just the symptoms.
Welcome back to our podcast, where we're diving deep into the dynamics of arguments, particularly how small issues can balloon into major conflicts. Today, we're focusing on the psychological aspects behind these tiny fights. To help us unpack this, we have psychologist Dr. Sarah Thompson with us. Sarah, can you explain why seemingly trivial matters escalate? What's happening in our minds that causes a simple disagreement over, say, the way someone loads the dishwasher to spiral into a full-blown argument?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me back. What's fascinating about human psychology is that our brains are wired to seek meaning in our interactions. When a small issue arises, it often triggers deeper emotional responses. For example, someone might feel disrespected if their partner doesn't load the dishwasher the right way. It's not just about the dishes, it's about feeling valued or heard. So, these tiny issues can easily tap into broader themes, such as control or partnership dynamics, causing an emotional reaction that feels disproportionate to the situation.
That's a really insightful point, Sarah. It seems like the underlying emotions can create a storm out of a teacup. How can people recognize these patterns before they escalate? Are there strategies that couples can use to address the tiny issues before they blow up?
Definitely. One effective strategy is practicing mindfulness and self-awareness. Couples should take a moment to pause and identify what they're really feeling when a small argument arises. They might ask themselves if their anger is truly about the dishwasher or if it stems from something deeper, like feeling overwhelmed at work. Communication is key here. Instead of jumping into a defensive stance, partners can express their feelings by using I statements, like, I feel overlooked when my preferences aren't considered. This shifts the focus from blame to mutual understanding, which can significantly reduce tension and prevent escalation.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We've been diving deep into the intricate dynamics of relationships and how small issues can escalate into larger conflicts. Today, I want to explore the role of communication in these tiny fights. Guest, can you elaborate on how poor communication contributes to the escalation of minor disagreements?
Absolutely. Communication is crucial in any relationship, and when it breaks down, even trivial matters can spiral out of control. Often, people don't feel heard or understood, and that leads to frustration. For example, if someone feels their partner isn't listening to their concerns over something small like household chores, it can snowball into a fight about respect and appreciation. It's like a pressure cooker. Small issues keep getting added in, and if there's no outlet, eventually it explodes.
That's a great analogy. So, it sounds like the lack of effective communication creates a buildup of resentment. How can couples be proactive in addressing minor issues before they escalate? Are there strategies you would recommend?
Definitely. One effective strategy is to have regular check-ins as a couple. This can be a dedicated time to talk about feelings, concerns, or even the little annoyances that may have cropped up. It creates a safe space where both partners feel validated. Another useful technique is the I feel statements. Instead of saying, you never do the dishes, you might say, I feel overwhelmed when the dishes pile up because it makes me feel unsupported. This shifts the focus from blame to personal feelings, which can help reduce defensiveness.
Those are practical tips. I love the idea of using I feel statements. It seems like a way to acknowledge individual emotions without putting the other person on the defensive. But what happens when one partner is more open to discussing these issues than the other? It might create an imbalance in emotional labor.
That's a common challenge. When one partner is more willing to communicate, it can feel frustrating for the other partner who may not be as open or who may need time to process. In these cases, patience is key. The partner who is ready to discuss should encourage dialogue without pushing too hard. Perhaps setting a specific time for these conversations can help the less open partner prepare. It's also important to recognize that everyone has different communication styles and emotional processing speeds, and that's okay. Flexibility in these situations can lead to healthier interactions.
Welcome back to our podcast, where we're diving deeper into how small fights can carry big meanings. It's fascinating how seemingly minor disagreements can escalate into major conflicts. Earlier, we touched on the role of communication in these scenarios. But I'd love to explore the psychological aspects further. Why do you think our backgrounds or upbringing play such a crucial role in how we react to these small issues?
That's a great question. Our backgrounds shape our response mechanisms. For instance, if someone grew up in a household where conflict was avoided at all costs, they might react to a minor disagreement with heightened anxiety. They could either shut down or explode out of frustration because they've never learned effective conflict resolution skills. On the other hand, if someone comes from a family that frequently engaged in open discussions, they might have a healthier way of navigating disputes. Understanding these patterns can help us recognize why we respond the way we do in small arguments.
Absolutely, and that brings us to the importance of self-awareness in these situations. When we find ourselves getting worked up over something trivial, it might be helpful to pause and reflect on why we're feeling that way. Do you think self-awareness can actually diffuse the situation before it escalates?
Definitely. Self-awareness acts as a crucial tool in managing our emotions. When we recognize that our anger over a small issue might stem from a deeper, unresolved conflict or a personal trigger, we can take a step back. This pause allows us to assess the actual importance of the issue at hand versus what our emotional response might suggest. For example, if someone is arguing about leaving the cap off a toothpaste tube, it could symbolize their underlying frustration with feeling unheard in the relationship. Identifying that connection can transform a small fight into an opportunity for deeper understanding and communication.
Welcome back to our podcast, Small Fights, Big Meaning. In our previous segments, we've explored how minor disagreements can spiral into major conflicts. Today, I'd like to focus on the psychological aspects behind this phenomenon. Why do you think people often escalate small issues into larger arguments?
That's a great question. One aspect to consider is emotional triggers. Often, the small issue at hand represents something much larger, like unresolved feelings or past grievances. For example, if someone feels that their partner isn't listening, a minor disagreement about household chores can suddenly evoke feelings of neglect that are rooted deeper in the relationship. It's like a pressure cooker. The tiny issue is just the steam escaping.
Absolutely, and that makes a lot of sense. So, in those moments, how can we differentiate between the small issue and what's really at stake? How do we recognize that we might be overreacting?
Self-awareness is key here. When you find yourself getting disproportionately upset over a minor issue, it's important to take a step back and assess your feelings. A good technique is to ask yourself, why is this bothering me so much? And, is there an unresolved issue surfacing? Journaling can be helpful, as it allows you to articulate your emotions and reflect on whether they relate to the present situation or something deeper. This can lead to more constructive conversations.
That's really insightful. A reflective approach seems essential. What about communication strategies? How can people express their feelings without escalating the situation further?
Effective communication is crucial. One method is using I statements, which help express your feelings without placing blame. For instance, saying, I feel unheard when you leave your shoes by the door, instead of, you never listen to me, can change the tone of the conversation. It allows the other person to hear your feelings without getting defensive. Additionally, setting a calm environment and timing your discussions when both parties are relaxed can make a significant difference in how the conversation unfolds.
Welcome back to our ongoing exploration of those seemingly small fights that can escalate into significant arguments. Today, we're diving deeper into the psychology behind why minor irritations can blow up. I want to reference a concept called the straw that broke the camel's back. It's fascinating how a singular, seemingly inconsequential issue, like leaving dirty dishes in the sink, can trigger an intense emotional response. What are your thoughts on how these little grievances accumulate over time, becoming monumental in our relationships?
That's a great point. The accumulation of minor issues often creates a sense of resentment or frustration. When we suppress our feelings about these small annoyances, they don't just disappear, they build up. Eventually, when something trivial occurs, it can become a lightning rod for all those bottled up emotions. It's like a pressure cooker. That minor incident, let's say a partner forgetting to take out the trash, can evoke feelings of being unappreciated or ignored, which are much deeper issues. This is where conflict often arises, as it transcends the trivial act itself.
Exactly. It's not just about the trash, it's about what it represents. A lack of consideration, shared responsibility, or even love. And this is where communication comes into play. How can we better express our feelings about these small grievances before they escalate? What strategies would you suggest for couples to tackle these tiny issues head-on, rather than letting them fester?
Open communication is crucial. One effective strategy is to adopt a check-in routine. Couples can set aside time each week to discuss any annoyances or concerns in a safe, non-confrontational way. This allows both partners to express their feelings and address issues before they grow too large. Additionally, using I statements can help, such as, "I feel hurt when the dishes are left in the sink," rather than saying, "You never do the dishes." This shifts the focus from blame to expressing personal feelings, which fosters understanding and reduces defensiveness. It's all about creating a space where both partners feel heard and valued.
Welcome back to our podcast, Small Fights, Big Meaning. We've been diving into how seemingly trivial issues can spiral into major conflicts. In the last episode, we touched on the role of communication styles. Today, I want to explore how our upbringing influences our reactions to these small issues. How do our childhood experiences shape the way we perceive and respond to minor disagreements?
That's a fantastic point. Our childhood experiences play a significant role in shaping our conflict resolution styles. For instance, if someone grew up in a household where minor disagreements were met with shouting or avoidance, they might unconsciously carry that behavior into their adult relationships. On the other hand, if a person experienced open discussions and healthy resolutions during their youth, they are likely to approach conflicts with a more constructive mindset. It's essential to recognize these patterns because they can often be triggers for larger arguments when small issues arise.
Absolutely, and that brings us to the idea of emotional triggers. Sometimes, a small argument can bring up feelings from past experiences that we didn't even realize were still bothering us. How can people identify these emotional triggers and address them before they escalate into bigger fights?
Great question. Identifying emotional triggers starts with self-awareness. One effective method is to keep a journal of your emotional responses during conflicts. When you notice that a small issue leads to an outsized reaction, take some time to reflect on why that might be. Ask yourself questions like, "What does this remind me of?" Or, "Why does this bother me so much?" Additionally, discussing your feelings with a trusted friend or therapist can provide valuable insights. It's all about unpacking those feelings to prevent them from boiling over during seemingly insignificant disputes.
That's really insightful, and it's a reminder that communication is key. But what about the role of assumptions in these small fights? Many arguments begin with misunderstandings or assumptions about what the other person is thinking. How can we reduce these misinterpretations?
Assumptions can be dangerous because they create narratives that might not even be true. One way to combat this is to practice what's called curiosity-driven communication. Instead of jumping to conclusions, ask open-ended questions to clarify intentions. For example, if your partner snaps over a small issue, instead of thinking, "They don't care about me," try asking, "Is something else bothering you?" This approach opens the door to deeper conversations and can often reveal underlying issues that need addressing, preventing small skirmishes from escalating.
Welcome back to our podcast, where we're diving deep into the nuanced world of small fights and their unexpectedly large meanings. Today, we're exploring how everyday disagreements can escalate. We've touched on underlying issues in previous segments. I want to pivot a bit and discuss how communication styles contribute to these tiny skirmishes. What's your take on how different communication styles can amplify minor disagreements?
That's a great topic to explore. Communication styles are essential because they set the tone for how we interpret situations. For example, someone who is more assertive may perceive a simple oversight, like forgetting to take out the trash, as a lack of respect. On the other hand, a passive communicator may bottle up feelings until they explode. These differing styles can create a cycle where each person misreads the other's intentions, making a small issue balloon into a full-blown argument.
That misinterpretation makes so much sense. It's like a chain reaction where one person's style triggers a response from the other. Now, let's talk about emotional triggers. We've all noticed that sometimes, seemingly irrelevant comments can hit a nerve. Why do you think certain small issues resonate more deeply with us, leading to larger conflicts?
Absolutely. Emotional triggers often stem from past experiences or unresolved conflicts. If someone has a history of feeling ignored, a minor comment about their preferences might trigger a defensive response. It's like pressing an old bruise. Our reactions are often tied to deeper insecurities or past hurts. When tiny issues arise, they can touch on these unresolved feelings, making the conflict feel much larger than the original issue. This is why awareness and emotional intelligence are crucial in managing our reactions.
As we dive deeper into the topic of small fights leading to big arguments, I'd like to explore why certain seemingly trivial issues trigger such strong reactions. What do you think is at the core of this phenomenon? Is it more about the specific issue at hand, or is it often a reflection of deeper, underlying emotions?
Great question. I believe it's often a combination of both. The small issue, let's say forgetting to put the cap back on the toothpaste, might seem trivial, but it can symbolize larger issues like respect or attention to detail. When these minor annoyances accumulate, they tap into our deeper feelings of frustration or inadequacy. It's like a pressure cooker. Eventually, the lid blows off, and that small fight becomes a significant argument.
That makes a lot of sense. So, in a way, these tiny issues can act as triggers for unresolved conflicts or unmet needs in a relationship. How can couples recognize when a small fight is indicative of larger issues? Are there signs they should look out for?
Absolutely. One major sign is the intensity of the reaction. If a disagreement about something minor escalates quickly, it might be a red flag. Couples should also pay attention to their communication patterns. Are they using harsh language or bringing up past grievances? Often, when the fight shifts from the immediate issue to broader accusations, that's a clear indication that there's more at play. It's essential to take a step back and ask, what's really bothering us here?
As we wrap up our conversation, I think it's essential to reflect on how these small fights can reveal deeper issues in our relationships. You know, often it's not about the dishes left unwashed or the laundry piled up. It's about feeling unappreciated or unheard. What are your thoughts on how these tiny arguments might act as a gateway to discussing larger, underlying concerns?
Absolutely. It's fascinating how something minor can trigger a larger emotional response. In many cases, these small disputes are merely symptoms of greater relationship dynamics at play. For example, a couple might argue over a misplaced item, but the real issue might be about trust or communication. Addressing these surface-level arguments gives couples a chance to dig deeper, explore their feelings, and ultimately strengthen their bond. It's an opportunity for growth rather than just a conflict.
That's a great point. And it's interesting how often people avoid these discussions, thinking they can just let it go, or ignore the tiny irritations. But in reality, ignoring them often leads to much larger blow-ups later. What strategies do you think couples can employ to handle these minor disagreements before they escalate?
One effective strategy is to establish open lines of communication where both partners feel safe expressing their feelings. Utilizing I statements, like, I feel overwhelmed when the dishes pile up, can help convey emotions without sounding accusatory. Additionally, regular check-ins can prevent small annoyances from building up. Setting aside time to discuss any minor grievances can encourage a healthier dialogue. Finally, practicing empathy and trying to understand your partner's perspective is crucial. It's about creating a collaborative environment where both parties feel valued.
Such valuable insights. It seems like being proactive is key to maintaining healthy relationships. As we conclude today's episode, let's remind our listeners that while these small fights might seem trivial, they carry significant meaning. Addressing them can lead to deeper understanding, improved communication, and ultimately, stronger connections. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure discussing these nuances of relationship dynamics. Remember, it's not just about the fight itself but understanding what it represents. I hope listeners feel encouraged to take a closer look at their own interactions and approach them with curiosity rather than frustration. Wishing everyone a path to healthier, more fulfilling relationships.